Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Data Unchained. I'm your host, Molly Presley. Before I introduce today's very special guest, let me tell you a little bit about this podcast. The podcast was generated around the concept that data has become increasingly decentralized. If you think back to the days of the mainframe where a building was dedicated to the computer and the applications and people working on it were all typically working within that same building, and then kind of speed forward through the years of the evolution of the cloud, of strong processing in devices like your cell phone, edge computing, and now the generation of architectures that are driving artificial intelligence initiatives. Data has become increasingly decentralized, and yet it's never been more valuable to harness the value of what data you have, to keep it, know what you have, and put it to work in your organization. So what Data Unchained digs into is both the problems and challenges of managing and monetizing decentralized data, as well as the solutions and some of the great business outcomes you can get when you conquer the challenge. So without further ado, let me introduce today's guest. For many of you, she may be a familiar face. Harriet Coverston is the CTO and co-founder of Versity Software, or they just go by Versity at versity.com. Harriet, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So before we jump in, I want to congratulate Harriet at least one more time on a recent recognition that she earned at the SuperWomen of Flash and the Future of Memory and Storage conference out in Santa Clara, California. So she won the award this year for being one of the most notable leaders of not just technology, but as a woman in mentoring and running a company, and even as an entrepreneur. So Harriet, it's a well-earned award, and we wanted to take a minute to both recognize your contributions to the industry, but also dig into a lot of the knowledge that you have in your brain too around the topic of this show. So congratulations for the recognition.
And thank you, Molly. It's an amazing honor. And actually, you and Kimberly, thank you for promoting this honor along with FMS, because we really want to get more women in the industry. So it really, really honors that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have to say I was a little giddy with excitement when I got to present the award to Harriet, mostly because when we take a step back and look at mentorship and people that you look up to throughout your career, when I was an early, I think, product manager at a company called SpectraLogic, I got to bump into Harriet in an alliance-related discussion, individual contributor just getting started in the tech world. And I remember sitting on a call with her and her colleague, Bruce, and listening to the innovation and thinking, wow, she's not the non-technical person, that sometimes is the stereotype around women. She was the one that everyone had to turn to and explain, really how the technology worked and a lot of the, engineering side of the tech. And I really found that inspirational. And Harriet definitely stuck with me as I've gone through my career as one of those people that I really looked up to and what you had accomplished in your career. So I was excited to get to be a part of giving this award to you, or at least part of the group recognizing you. And, it's fun to share with you. You don't necessarily always know who you've impacted. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to share with the audience, just a personal experience I've had in working with you.
I definitely remember you, Molly. Yes, I remember that.
Tell us, you gave a short presentation on this at the ceremony in California, but would you talk, just kind of taking a step back, to what were the days like when you were first getting started? How were women received in development organizations? Maybe just share a little bit of your experience and how you got started.
Yeah, well, I got started early. I grew up on a farm in the panhandle of Florida, but attended Florida State University. And that's where I actually had my first job. I operated and helped out at the help desk. And I learned Fortran at that time and programmed for several professors. And that experience was really helped me. I applied to 8 companies after I graduated, and all 8 wanted me to come to work for them. And I selected Lawrence Livermore National Lab, which was really the largest computational site, I believe, at that time. And it was an amazing place to work, really amazing. And of course, they really appreciated that I knew how to program, right, which was rare. It didn't matter that I was a girl, right? I just knew how to program, and that's what was important to them. They put me on a 5-person team, 4 guys, older guys, and myself, and we wrote the Livermore Time Sharing System, which was the operating system for the CDC 7600. So we debugged that system in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Flew out there every other week for 6 months. And I had the opportunity to meet my hero, Seymour Cray.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, it was amazing. I'll never forget that. Yeah. So
that's
the machine.
That's an epic moment.
Right. Definitely an amazing person in HPC, built all those big supercomputers. So, yeah, very amazing.
So tell me, we're in a world where, most of us think about as hiring managers, or if we're going out and applying to jobs, that there's maybe, certain metrics organizations are trying to achieve on diversity or the different, blends of their workforce. Did any of that exist back then? Or was this mostly about who knew Fortran and could code really well?
I really don't think they cared, that I was a girl, right? I was a blonde girl with a thick Southern accent, actually. But they really, there was no computer science at the time, no degrees, right? It was the 60s. I went to work there in 1967, and amazing time. I learned so much at the lab and really loved my days there, definitely. Yeah.
So a lot of our listeners may not be real familiar with HPC or what the national labs do. We have, listeners from other markets, enterprise. Maybe could you talk just a little bit about what is the mission of supercomputing in some of these national labs?
Right. Well, the Livermore is the DOE, which is the Department of Energy. And so they're specializing in energy, right? And I was so pleased to see them talk about fusion, because I've followed it. In fact, I was going to work on the OS for this fusion project when I actually ended up leaving in the mid-70s, leaving Livermore. So it was just amazing to see the work that's going on. And I'm so hopeful because climate change is here and we need, alternative energy sources, not fossil fuels anymore.
As quickly as possible, right?
Right, as quickly. And fusion is, I know it's not tomorrow, but I'm hoping. And Livermore is definitely a pioneer in that area, definitely. Yeah.
So when you moved out off of Livermore, was that when you embarked on building SAM-FS, or was there kind of a gap between those?
Yeah, no, they still didn't do SAM-FS until later. I left Livermore in the mid-70s to move back actually to St. Paul. And okay. I went to work for Control Data Corporation, an amazing company. And I worked on quite a few projects there. One initially where we pioneered a front end for the the Star 100 supercomputer, which was really not done. Everything was done on the supercomputer, but we moved it off, allowing more computation on the supercomputer. And then I started to work on when they came out with the Cyber 205, I worked on the OS for the Cyber 205. And the Cyber 205 was a virtual memory vector machine, very high performance. I was actually the project leader where we put tape on that OS and did an amazing demo for Mobil Oil in the early 80s. It was really, yeah.
That was actually was that your first tape related project?
Actually, it was, yeah. First tape. I was the project leader and we had the demo mobile oil came up. And by the way, the head application person was a woman. I want to point that out. She was amazing. And they brought up pallets of tape. And we actually filmed this demo, which I've actually have. It's an amazing, you can hear, yes, the vacuum column tape drives, right? They're spinning and we're mounting them. And of course, since I could type well, I was at the console typing in the volume serial numbers to make it go. But it was an amazing, amazing time.
You were the puppeteer in the background, yes, moving everything around.
But then I left and I went to work still at Control Data on a project called CDCnet. And this was 84 timeframe, very early networking software. Actually delivered the first installation to the University of Wyoming, and I'll never forget that. It was really a fun time. And actually, I don't think I would have left Control Data had it not been for this event that happened. Mobile Oil called us in, the other co-founder of Large Storage Configurations, and pointed to us and said, we want you to give us worm optical. Tape was actually kind of standing still at that point. They wanted worm optical. They turned to Control Data, which was in the same room, and said, and we want to buy it from you. So there was a cooperation, and I co-founded Large Storage Configurations in 1986. And we went about putting worm optical on the NOS operating system, which was Control Data's operating system. We did it, but in the early 90s, Control Data was kind of going down, right? Sadly. Sad. But we decided, based on all that we really needed the metadata to describe where the data was. It wasn't enough. I mean, I visited Mobile Oil. They had a warehouse. It was big as a stadium full of these tapes, right? But there was really, the user was responsible for knowing what was on those tapes and actually requesting the appropriate tape to get the data that they needed. And we said, why isn't this done automatically? And that was when SAM-QFS came about, which was really a pioneering archiving file system. It came to be known as HSM, or Hierarchical Storage Management, which means automatic data management for tiered policy-based storage. And we actually put worm as the tier, and then tape. Tape, actually, I always say worm kicked tape in the butt, right? It really changed, and tape started really coming back, being the choice archive in the 90s. And so we put tape on SAM-QFS and had quite a number of customers. And
you developed SAM-QFS at Sun, is that correct? It wasn't. Okay.
No, SAM-QFS was actually this first archiving at LSC.
Oh,
SAM-QFS.
It was. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And in fact, I started SAM-QFS. I'll give you the distinction there. This was due to a large government site that came to LSC and said, we want a multi-node archiving. They were ingesting vast amounts of satellite data. They needed multiple nodes to process that data. They needed it archived. And so that was when QFS came about. We renamed the file system after I put it as a multi-node distributed file system, archiving still file system. We renamed it SAM-QFS. And actually, that was when Sun acquired LSC. And in large part, that acquisition was really due to the fact that they sold them the hardware, they sold them the storage. They had bought another company and sold them the RAID storage. This was all SAN, very early, SAN-based. And then after the acquisition of LSC, they were selling the software. So this is how Sun came into the picture, acquired us in 2001. And I continued
So
SAM-QFS.
What was your role in these pieces as you think through, you're working with governments and massive oil companies and technology companies building, optical and tape. What was your role in identifying which is the right media and, that this file system should work a certain way to overcome user managed metadata, like literally written in a notebook or whatever they were doing? Like,
Right.
were you working across the different companies on the vision, or did you kind of hunker down and start writing code and sell it to them? How did that work?
Well, we always listen to customers, and really they have the requirements, right, that they need in their data management. So we're always listening to customers, but we also recognize the need for this automatic, management rather than the user left up to the user to manage. This was the beginning of it in the 90s. And then the multi-node file system. Okay, the site needs more processing, right? You can't do it on one node. We need multiple. We need a shared file system. And that came about QFS. In fact, they had come to us. They sent a consultant to talk to us. We also delivered streaming I/O, put in Stripe groups so that we were streaming the I/O out to the RAID devices. It was really an exciting time, very exciting.
So did you ever feel that it was difficult for you to have a seat at the table? Is there, and I'm kind of switching over to the women leadership side of the conversation a little bit. It's a fairly male dominated industry, being in high tech and HPC. Did you have struggles along the way that were related, do you feel, to gender, or was it more just the brain power to put these systems together? Can you share a little bit more of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't think, I think it, Coach, I know it's male dominated. In fact, at the FMS conference, what was the percentage of women? It was not more than 10% that I saw, right? And maybe not even 10%.
Yeah.
And so it's still male dominated. But I always felt a part by really sticking to technology. And I think I mentioned this in my talk, that when I was at Control Data, they had offered me management jobs because they were really way ahead of their time. Control Data was an amazing company. So the fact that they offered me, a woman made a management position, but I turned them down because I really love technical. I always wanted to stay technical. And
that served you well, right?
Yes,
you see now many
did.
of the best CEOs in the world, or most successful ones, are technical. That's become a good decision, I think, to stay technical.
Right. Yes, it's really been an amazing journey, and I'm glad I did that. Stay technical.
And how has the cloud affected things? It came along, a bit after the 90s, of course, but how has that affected the space, and has that shifted how file systems are used? Maybe share a little bit how you've seen that technology innovation affect your world.
Right. It's really, really changed the tech landscape, right? In a good way, in a very good way. Because we've got, in fact, we have hybrid cloud, we have private cloud, public cloud, but basically it's an easy way for users to save their data, access their data, and it actually has influenced our products at Versity big time. We definitely support cloud as another tier of storage. I mean, we've always supported tape, then we support disk, a mounted file system, right? Doesn't have to be our file system, but it can be NFS, remote or local, and cloud. And the cloud that we support, S3 and Azure, and we have sites running both. And then our new product that we developed, due to all these sites that are running hybrid cloud, is the Versity Gateway. And this is an open source Apache 2 GitHub, welcome contributors, and it has made a true difference in how people are using our product, because they can come in with the cloud interface. We take that data and then ship it off to either cloud, tape, whatever their policy specifies for that data. So cloud is a real game changer, definitely.
And tell us a little bit more about Versity. We didn't go into a lot of details. So we talked about SAM-FS and, kind of how you went from single node to multi-node, and then you went on to SAM-FS in a shared file system. How has Versity the next kind of incarnation of file systems and what was needed there that didn't exist in the other file systems.
Right, right. Well, at Sun, I continued SAM-QFS, right, as a distinguished engineer. Leaving in 2010 when Oracle acquired Sun, I really saw the need for more advanced archiving management and met Bruce Gilpin, our CEO of Versity, who is an amazing leader and manager, CEO for Versity. And we actually initially we saw the need for Linux, right? Solaris was drifting, right? Not gone at that time.
There was a few chuckles in the audience when you said that at FMS as well.
That's right. And I regret it too. I mean, it was really great. I was sad to see it go. But basically, we got to move on to what the industry is requiring, and it was Linux. And Bruce and I decided to put the archiving file system on Linux. We called it Versity Storage Manager. It's a distributed high-performance archiving file system to tiered storage, right? However, we decided in actually due to a lot of influence from our customers to build ScoutFS. And ScoutAM actually is the name of the product. It uses the file system ScoutFS. But ScoutAM is named Scale Out Archive Manager. And ScoutAM actually supports parallel archiving across all the nodes. It automatically recognizes what's connected, what tapes here, cloud, disk, more tapes here. It automatically configures and actually applies the policy which for the data that's coming into the file system and archives that data off to the tiered storage according to the policy. The file system is amazing, ScoutFS, because it actually indexes the files to make it easy for ScoutAM to determine what's changed, what needs to the policies applied, right? A lot of times you got to go back and scan to find those files. Not with ScoutAM, we do an indexing. So the file system keeps what files are new and what files have been modified and delivers that indexed list for a fast query to ScoutAM who archives that data. So it's really, really changed. And we have sites with billions and billions of files, and we actually can support 1 trillion files in our file system. We have incremental dumps of our metadata, which are happening periodically to back that data up. It's really a game changer, and we're very proud of ScoutAM.
So that fits firmly in the Data Unchained podcast topic of, large data sets that are being stored across different types of media, different types of systems, and trying to know what you have so you can put it to work. So just a quick shout out, decentralized data folks, a cool technology to look at. I think it's most technologists probably work on or build, if they're lucky, one file system in their career. I think I've counted 4 or 5 that you've mentioned so far. So that's a little bit staggering if you really think about it for a minute. And, the common rule of thumb, I think, is it's about 10 years to build a file system and get it stable and in the market, so that's some serious file system perseverance. And just I was sitting there kind of chuckling in the back of my head as I was counting them. So Harriet, how does this all apply now in a world where folks are thinking about AI and how they're going to put their data sets to work for artificial intelligence? Is there a role for Versity? And just kind of as a technologist, where do you see data and access to data evolving to meet AI needs?
Right. We actually have quite a number of sites with AI data, and we're actually getting more every day. It's amazing. And as we know, AI data requires vast amounts of unstructured data. And the number one limiter for that is energy. Now, what does our product do? It moves the data off high cost, expensive storage onto lower cost tiers of storage, minimizing the need for energy. And that's the number one limiter for AI. So we feel like we play a big role in the AI environment.
So access to a lot of data and retaining it in a power efficient way so that you only spin up what you need to.
Right. And that access, interestingly enough, is very random for IO data and multiple simultaneous access to the same data, right? But we handle that all transparently. Yeah.
Very cool. So Harriet, as we're wrapping up, I want to talk a little bit about, if you'll go into mentor mode for a moment, if you'd be so kind. So what are some tips that you would give to women in the industry, whether they're just getting started and trying to get their first job out of college, or aspiring to grow into, a C-suite type of leader?
Yeah, I would inspire them to find mentors. They're out there, right? And they really
There's two on the phone right here right now, or two on this podcast.
Yes, they really help. And we want more women in the tech industry. So we're going to be there for you and encourage you. So I would encourage a network, build a network, of trusted, companions, right, in your field. And because it can be a minefield out there, right? I have stepped on a few, so gotta be, it will, but pick yourself up, get going. It's not the end, right? Yes.
Yeah. And I think there's a piece of just being brave and bold, to put yourself out there, and it's easy to get intimidated to ask for a mentor, or maybe put yourself out for that job that maybe you'll be the only woman at the table. I know I'm often the only woman at the table. Probably you are too.
Yeah.
And that may be fine and accepted by everyone else, but in your own head, it may seem scary. So I think being bold and brave and knowing people, will accept you is a big deal. But if you think about somebody approaching, whether it's you or, someone like you in the industry as a mentor, I think that's intimidating too. Have you had folks approach you? What methods do you think work?
Actually, thinking back on my Sundays, they actually had a mentorship where they actually.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know if they assigned people or gave us a choice or whatever, but they really paired up the mentor and the mentee. And I had some amazing times. And I actually saw a reaction on one of the posts, and it was from a guy that I mentored, and he was in St. Petersburg, Russia, right?
Oh, wow.
So, and he remembered, right? And actually knew me and remembered. Yeah, that was really cool. I really like that.
That is cool. So seeking out organizational offered
I think
opportunities.
I would really encourage companies to do that. I think it really works. Smaller companies, it just works because you're there, right, with people, and it happens. I know we have quite a few women and tech women too at Versity, so you don't feel as isolated. I think in a smaller company, maybe something to look at, but big companies get that program started.
Yeah, they do, which is great that they invest the time and the money and the focus in it.
Right.
And there's for sure industry groups. There's, of course, the event at Flash Memory is actually now called the Future of Memory and Storage event that we were talking about throughout this podcast, where there was a networking event and an opportunity to engage and meet people in the supercomputing space, which Harriet and I both spent a lot of our careers in. There is Women of HPC that I'm a part of, and they have chapters, I think, dozens of them around the world. So you can definitely seek out groups that will help you get started if that's something where you're not sure to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Harriet, as we finish up the podcast, what do you see as next for you? Are you going to go build another file system? Is Versity going to continue on
Versity is
empowering AI?
we are working on a new invention. I can't talk about it right now, so stay tuned.
Can't leak it here. That's not good.
Can't leak it here. But stay tuned. Follow us, versity.com.
Perfect. Well, Harriet, thank you for joining the show. And, again, congratulations on the well-earned Leadership Award. And it's been a pleasure having a chance to connect with you.
It really is. Thank you so much, Molly. Yeah, it's a real honor. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Data Unchained, powered by Hammerspace. To learn more, visit hammerspace.com. If you have a guest you would like to hear on the show, email me at molly@hammerspace.com.